The Council of Suns met in the shining halls of Iriath Prime, a station carved from crystal and steel that floated above a dead white star. The council chamber was vast and round, with walls of polished glass that revealed the endless void outside. Inside, the rulers of 20 species sat in a circle. Some shimmered like liquid light, some clicked their jaws, and others pulsed with colors. No human I was meant to see. In one small corner sat the humans. Ambassador Mira Solon could feel the weight of alien stares pressing down on her. Humanity had joined the Alliance only 5 years ago. To the elder races, Earth was still new, untested, and fragile. They saw humans as children who had clawed their way into the stars with stubborn courage and primitive machines. Mira sat tall and calm, but inside her heart beat like a war drum. At her side stood Commander Jace Arden, a tall man with sharp eyes hardened by battles at the edges of human space. His presence was steady, grounding, though Mira could feel his tension as well. Around them, whispers filled the chamber. The other species did not even try to hide their doubt. The High Consul, Arithis of the Lumestra, rose from her seat. Her body was radiant, a being of refracted light shaped into graceful form. Her voice shimmered through the chamber like a song of glass. Our fleets are broken. Our weapons fail. The Umbric veil spreads. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. The Umbric veil. A wave of living shadow that consumed stars and swallowed fleets. It was not a fleet, not a race, but something older, something that seemed to drink light itself. Worlds had fallen already. Armies had vanished into silence. Arithis continued, her bright form flickering as though dimmed by the very thought. The veil feeds on energy. Plasma, antimatter, fusional fuel, its hunger. Every strike makes it stronger. Unless we find a weapon it cannot devour, the Alliance will collapse. Her words hung in the air. One by one, the leaders spoke, but none had answers. The crystalline Varathi murmured of retreat. The insectoid Krexan spoke of sealing borders. Even the towering Keller giants, proud warriors, lowered their heads in silence. For all their brilliance, for all their endless technology. The galaxies stood powerless before the dark. Mira felt her throat tighten. She watched their hopelessness grow, and for a moment she almost stayed silent too. What could Earth offer that these ancient civilizations could not? But then she saw Jace glance at her, his eyes sharp, filled with a thought he did not voice. She leaned closer, whispering, "What are you thinking?" Jace's voice was low, steady. "They've forgotten the oldest weapon we ever had." Mira frowned. "What do you mean?" Jace turned his gaze to the starless void beyond the glass wall. "Fire." The word echoed in her mind. Fire. It sounded almost laughable. How could something so old, so simple, matter in a war among stars? Yet as she thought about it, something deep stirred in her. Humanity had been born in fire. It had carried them through ice ages, through nights of terror, through wars and storms. Fire had been their first weapon, their first tool, their first light, and these great races had, they all truly forgotten. Her hands trembled as she stood. All eyes turned to her, the lone human among giants. Mira forced her voice steady. "Honored Council," she began. "You speak of light, of plasma, of antimatter, but there is something older than all of it. Something every child of Earth knows. Something that carried us through the dark for 100,000 years." The chamber grew silent, curious eyes fixed on her, some mocking, some cold. High Consul, Irithis tilted her shining head. "What is it you propose, human?" Mira lifted her hand. A small hologram bloomed above her palm, a flicker of orange flame. Simple, weak, a spark dancing against the vast shadows of the chamber. Fire. The chamber erupted in whispers, in laughter, in disbelief. The aquatic envoy, Relian, of the Marith, clacked its jaws in amusement. "You bring us sparks, flames, that cook meat. Do you think children's toys will burn the dark?" A crystalline delegate chimed, its body ringing like bells. How primitive. Fire has no place among the stars. We moved beyond it eons ago, but Jace stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. You laugh because you've forgotten. But fire is not just heat. Fire consumes. Fire spreads. Fire lives. It is not energy to be drunk. It is hunger made real. And the veil cannot drink what is not pure light. The laughter faded. Unease spread instead. Because somewhere deep, in ancestral memory, each of these species had once feared fire. They had once seen it rage through forests, through cities, through battlefields. They had once run from it. Mira closed her fist, and the hologram flame vanished. You asked for a weapon the veil cannot feed upon. Humanity brings you fire. The chamber was silent now. No one mocked. No one laughed. The cold stars beyond the glass seemed to burn brighter, as if remembering the first light that had ever pierced the dark. The days after the council meeting were heavy with silence. Many species dismissed the human proposal as foolish, but a few were curious. The idea of fire in the age of antimatter and plasma seemed almost like a myth. Yet the council, desperate for hope, allowed humanity a single chance. Thus began Project Ember. On a remote station orbiting the barren, world Varan 6, the humans were given one hangar bay and a handful of volunteers. No alien engineers came to help, though many arrived only to watch, their eyes filled with doubt. Ambassador Mira Solon stood at the edge of the hangar, watching her people work. Sparks danced in the air as welding torches lit the shadows. Human engineers were building strange weapons barrels and chambers, fuel tanks and ignition systems. To the other species, they looked crude and primitive, but to Mira, they looked like hope. Commander Jace Arden moved among the workers, his voice steady as he gave orders. His uniform was dark, patched with scars of old battles. He carried himself like a man who knew the weight of command, but still shared the work of his crew. Pressure test the tanks again, he called. If the fuel leaks, it'll kill us faster than the veil. Myra walked over, her brow furrowed. How confident are you, Jace? Really? He met her eyes, and for a moment the commander's mask slipped. Confident enough to try, not enough to sleep at night. She nodded. His honesty was sharp, but it gave her strength. Humanity had always lived with doubt, yet they had always moved forward. That was what set them apart. At the far end of the hangar, several alien observers gathered. Among them was Admiral Threxel of the Varathi, a being whose crystalline body caught the light like 1,000 knives. His voice rang with contempt as he spoke to Mira. You build toys of fire, while the veil swallows suns. You waste our time. Human. Myra faced him calmly. You call them toys. But toys kept us alive when we were nothing but prey. Fire was the first tool that made us more than animals. Do not mistake age for weakness. The Varathi's crystal facets pulsed with irritation. He turned away, muttering in his own sharp tongue. The first test came on the third day. A chamber was cleared on the surface of Varan 6, a cold desert of black stone. The humans had built a weapon-aimed artillery cannon that fired shells filled with napalm-like gel. Old, crude, and dangerous. The observers watched from a glass tower as Jace gave the order. Light it. The cannon roared, kicking back with a thunder that echoed across the barren plain. The shell burst in the distance, splattering liquid fire across the rocks. The gel clung and spread, burning hotter as it consumed itself. The flames twisted in the thin air, orange and furious, a living creature that refused to die. The alien observers murmured. Many had never seen true fire before. Their civilizations had abandoned it so long ago that even the sight was alien to them. Then came the second phase of the test. A shard of the umbric veil, captured and caged within a field, was released near the flames. The shadow writhed, like liquid night, tendrils reaching outward to drink the heat. Plasma would have been swallowed instantly. lasers would have vanished. But the fire clung. The fire spread. The shadow reached again, but the flames licked at it, devouring the edges. The veil shrieked, its form flickering, shrinking. For the first time, the darkness recoiled. The chamber erupted with gasps. Some aliens leaned forward in shock. Others whispered with fear. Fire had wounded the unkillable. Jace's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. It works. Mira felt her heart pound. Against the cold stars, a spark had been lit, but not all were pleased. Admiral Threxel's crystal body flared with anger. This is madness. Fire is chaos. You cannot control it. You would unleash another danger upon us. Mira stepped forward, her voice sharp with emotion. Better chaos than surrender. Better fire than silence. For a moment, the chamber was still, and then, slowly, other voices joined. The aquatic Relian clicked its jaws not in laughter, but in reluctant respect. A Keller giant rumbled agreement, its deep voice shaking the walls. Even Arithis of the Lumestra shimmered brighter, as though the light within her carried hope again. Project Ember had begun. That night, as the humans worked to build more weapons, Mira stood alone at the viewport of the station. The stars stretched endlessly, cold and quiet. She pressed her hand against the glass and whispered to herself, "They think we play with fire. They don't understand. Fire was the first promise we ever made to ourselves, to survive no matter what." Behind her, Jace approached quietly. "We'll make them believe, Mira. But the real test won't be in a cage. It'll be when the veil comes for us." She turned to him, fear and hope mingling in her eyes. The human fleet was small, compared to the great armadas of the Alliance. Only a dozen warships, their hulls patched and scarred from older battles. They had no glowing crystal cannons, no gravity lances, no star-bending weapons. What they carried, instead, was new and old at the same time. Inside the hangar bays rested fire, Project Ember weapons missiles filled with burning gel, bombs packed with chemical fury, and flamethrower arrays meant for close-range strikes. Crude, dangerous. Human. Commander Jace Arden stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, staring at the holographic map before him. The Umbric veil was moving, a dark cloud spreading across the Orion frontier. It had already swallowed 2 mining colonies and half a dozen patrol ships. Now it drifted toward the outer colony of Nera's Hope, a small world with 50,000 civilians. If the fleet failed, those lives would vanish into silence. Ambassador Mira Solon stood at his side, her hands clasped tightly. She had insisted on coming, even though the mission was dangerous. She knew her voice might be needed to keep the Alliance listening, if they survived. A voice came from the comms officer. "Contact. The veil is approaching." The main screen lit up. At first, there was nothing, just the empty void. Then, slowly, shadows began to move. A wave of black mist, shifting like smoke and water, sliding toward them without sound. Within it glowed red, spark-size, or perhaps illusions. No one could tell. A chill ran through the bridge. Even the hardened soldiers shifted uneasily. The veil was not just an enemy. It was fear made real. Jace's voice broke the silence. "Weapons ready. Hold, steady." The Alliance observers, watching from distant ships, whispered through their channels. Many expected humanity to fall quickly. Plasma and antimatter had already failed. How could fire do better? The first shadow tendrils lashed out. They struck the Resolute's shields, draining them with a hiss of darkness. The lights flickered. Energy systems groaned. The veil fed on power like a starving beast. "Shields dropping. Fast," cried the tactical officer. "Cut auxiliary power," Jace ordered. "Divert everything to engines. Keep us moving." It was risky fighting with weak shields, but humanity had no choice. Energy only made the veil stronger. They had to strike with something it could not drink. "Load Ember missiles," Jace commanded. His voice was calm, but Mira saw the tension in his jaw. The order went out. Below deck, crews worked frantically, sliding massive chemical warheads into launch tubes. Fuel sloshed within, thick and deadly. Hands trembled, but no one stopped. They knew what was at stake. Missiles ready, the weapons officer said. Jace gave a single nod. Fire. The Resolute shook as the missiles roared into the dark. Trails of smoke and sparks followed them until they slammed into the approaching shadows. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light. The missiles burst, spilling liquid fire into the void. Orange and gold flames twisted in the black, clinging to the shadow as if alive. The veil shrieked a sound not heard but felt, rattling inside every mind. The flames spread where plasma beams had only vanished. The veil tried to smother them, but the fire clung tighter, feeding on itself. Gasps filled the bridge. For the first time, the darkness was burning. Myra's eyes widened, tears stinging. "It works, Jace, it works." The crew erupted in cheers, their voices raw with hope. But the fight was not over. The veil shifted, recoiling, then surged forward with renewed fury. More tendrils whipped out, striking other ships. The smaller frigate Dauntless was caught. Its engines failed as the shadow wrapped around it. "Dauntless is trapped," shouted the comms officer. On screen, the frigate's lights flickered as the veil began to consume it. The crew's voices filled the channel. Fear, desperation. Jay clenched his fists. "Bring us closer." "Prepare the ember cannons." Mira turned to him. "If we get too close, we'll be caught too." Jace's eyes were steel. Better to burn with them than watch them die. The Resolute charged forward, engines roaring. The ember cannon's giant flamethrowers mounted on the hull swung into position. At Jace's signal, they unleashed a torrent of burning gel. Streams of fire erupted into space, washing over the tendrils gripping the Dauntless. The shadows screamed and recoiled, thrashing in pain. Flames clung to them, spreading wider. Slowly, the grip loosened. The Dauntless broke free, limping but alive. Cheers filled the comms. Humanity had not just fought the Veil, they had saved one of their own. But the cost was clear. The Resolute's shields were nearly gone. The Veil was regrouping, pulling itself into a massive shape, larger than a battleship, red sparks glowing like hateful stars. The battle was far from finished. Mira stood beside Jace, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "They see us now. The Alliance. They know we're not weak." Jace nodded, his eyes fixed on the burning shadow. This was only the first spark. Now we show them how fire spreads. Outside, in the endless dark, the flames still burned, stubborn and alive, refusing to die. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had seen fire in the stars, and it was beautiful. The flames from the first battle still burned in memory. Across the Alliance, whispers spread like wildfire. The humans had wounded the Veil. Entire fleets had failed before, yet the smallest and youngest species had struck a blow where none dared hope. But victory brought not only hope, it brought fear. On the station Iriath Prime, the Council of Suns gathered once more. The chamber was filled with unease. Holograms of the battle flickered above the great table, showing fire consuming the shadows. Some alien delegates leaned forward in awe. Others recoiled, unsettled. Ambassador Mira Solon stood tall before them. She felt the weight of their stares, but this time there was less mockery, less laughter. Still, there was no unity. High Consul Erithus of the Lumestra shimmered brightly, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. "The humans have shown us a path we did not see. Fire harms the Veil, it may even stop it, but such power carries danger." At once Admiral Threxel of the Varathi rose, his crystalline body glowing red with anger. "Danger, it is madness. Look at what they build: primitive bombs, wild flames. Fire spreads without control. They would burn the stars themselves if they are not stopped." His voice rang like shattering glass. Humans are reckless, always reckless. They endanger us all. The chamber erupted in voices, some shouting in defense, others in agreement. The Keller giant slammed his fist on the table, making it tremble. Without them, the colony Nera's hope would already be ash. Do not speak of danger when they have saved lives. Mira listened, her chest tight. She knew what Threxel truly feared. It was not chaos. It was not fire. It was that humanity had succeeded where his people had failed. Pride was sharper than fear. Finally, Erithis raised a hand, her body glowing. Steady. Silence fell. The Council will not decide now. Humanity may continue Project Ember. But no, this Sif. The flame spread too far. If fire harms as much as it saves, we will turn against you. The words struck Mira like cold water. The Alliance gave them permission, but not trust. Later, in the quiet of the Resolute's bridge, Commander Jace Arden stood with Mira, watching stars drift past. The ship carried scars from the battle-burned plating, damaged shields, exhausted. Crews, but it was still alive. They don't believe in us, Jace said at last. His voice was low, tired. Myra sighed. Some do, some don't. But that doesn't matter. We can't wait for their faith. We only need time. Jace turned to her, his face shadowed by the dim lights. And what if they don't give us that? What if they decide humans are more dangerous than the Veil? Mira hesitated, her hands tightening behind her back. She had no answer. That night, whispers turned into action. Deep within the Alliance Council, secret messages passed from hand to hand, crystal to crystal. Admiral Threxel spoke to others who shared his fear. The Varathi had always seen themselves as defenders of order, rulers of strategy. Humanity threatened that balance. If fire spread across fleets, who would hold the power? Better to end it now, before the flames grew beyond control. The betrayal came swift. 2 days later, as the human fleet prepared to test larger Ember weapons, alarms screamed across the Resolute. Explosions shook the hangar bays. Flames of the wrong kind, this time. Sabotage.JACE rushed to the command deck, his eyes burning with fury. Report, engine room breach, shouted the officer. We've lost pressure in decks 3 and 4. Someone planted charges. The ship trembled again. Emergency lights bathed the halls in red dot. Mira staggered into the bridge, her voice sharp with disbelief. The Veil didn't do this. Someone inside the Alliance did. Jace's face hardened. He didn't need proof to know who Threxel. The betrayal cut deep. The Varathi Admiral had sent agents to cripple humanity before they could rise further. And now, in the cold dark, the human fleet fought not only the Veil, but also the shadows within their so-called allies. Crews rushed to contain the fires. The hangar bay was torn open to vacuum. 3 engineers lost to the void before emergency doors sealed. The Resolute limped, wounded not by the enemy, but by treachery. Jace stood at the center of the chaos, giving orders with a steady voice, though rage burned inside him. Seal the breaches. Get life support stable. If they want us gone, they'll have to do better than this. Mira moved to his side, her voice breaking with emotion. How can we fight the Veil if our own allies turn against us? Jace looked at her, eyes hard. We do what humans always do. We fight with what we have. We trust no one but each other. And when the time comes, we'll show them that better. The Resolute drifted in silence, her hull scarred and engines limping. The sabotage had nearly torn the ship apart. Decks were sealed off, crew members lost, and the smell of smoke still lingered in the halls. Humanity's fleet had shrunk too, less than what it had been before their first victory, and yet, they still flew. Ambassador Mira Solon walked through the medical bay, her eyes heavy as she looked at the wounded. Men and women lay on narrow cots, their faces pale, but their spirits unbroken. Some had burns, others had broken bones from the explosions. A young technician, no older than 20, tried to sit up when he saw her. We We can still fight, can't we? He asked, his voice thin. Mira knelt beside him, forcing a smile, though her heart ached. She touched his hand gently. Yes, we can still fight. We will fight. The boy's eyes softened, and he lay back, clutching her words like a lifeline. Mira stood and continued walking, her chest burning with grief. Every life mattered, and every life lost added weight to her heart. On the bridge, Commander Jace Arden studied the tactical map. The Umbric Vale was moving again, this time toward Keller's Reach, a fortress world belonging to one of the strongest Alliance species. If the Vale devoured that world, the morale of the entire Alliance would break. But humanity's fleet was too damaged, too small. They were barely holding together. An officer spoke with hesitation. Sir, if we engage them, now, with what's left, we won't last. Jace's jaw tightened. He knew it was true, but retreat was not an option. If Keller's Reach fell, the war was over. Mira entered the bridge, her eyes finding Jace. She could see the weight on his shoulders. For a moment, she wanted to tell him to rest, to breathe, but she knew there was no time. They don't expect us to fight, Jace said quietly. The Vale thinks we're broken. The Alliance thinks we'll hide. That's our advantage. Mira frowned. What are you planning? He looked at her, his eyes cold and sharp like steel. We take what's left of Ember. We strike straight at the heart of the swarm. No retreat, no hesitation. If we burn bright enough for the galaxy to see. The crew listened in silence. Some faces were pale, others grim, but not one spoke against him. Humanity had always been cornered throughout history, yet cornered humans were the most dangerous of all. Preparations began. In the hangars, engineers worked through blood and exhaustion, loading the last Ember warheads. There would be no second chance. Every weapon counted. Soldiers checked their suits and weapons, knowing they might not return. They spoke in quiet voices, not of fear, but of families, of homes, of Earth. Myra stood with them, speaking to each group, reminding them what they fought for. She told them of Earth's first fires, of ancestors who had faced beasts in the night with nothing but torches, and had survived. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. When the time came, the fleet moved. The stars shifted as the Resolute and her surviving escorts approached Keller's Reach. Ahead, the Vale loomed vast, endless, swallowing light itself. It was larger than ever, a sea of shadow stretching across half the sky. Red sparks glowed within, like hateful eyes staring back. The Keller fleet was already breaking under its assault. Their massive warships, glowing with advanced weapons, fired volley after volley, but the shadows only grew stronger, feeding on the energy. Ships vanished one by one, swallowed whole. Jace's voice rang across the human fleet. This is it. No one expects us to win, but that's why we will. Light the fire. The first wave of Ember missiles launched. Trails of flame streaked through the void, crashing into the dark. Explosions erupted, spilling fire across the shadows. The Vale shrieked, its form twisting as flames clung to it. But the darkness was vast, and the humans were few. The fire burned bright, but the Vale pushed forward, consuming more ships. On the Resolute's bridge, warnings flashed red. Hull breaches, shields gone, engines failing. Still Jace stood tall, refusing to waver. Bring us closer, he ordered. Sir, if we go any closer, we burn together. Jace cut in. His voice was calm, almost peaceful, but we burn where they can see. Mira's breath caught. She looked at him, fear and admiration colliding in her chest. Jace, he turned, meeting her eyes with a faint smile. This is who we are. This is what we do. The Resolute dove straight into the heart of the Vale. Ember cannons fired, streams of fire pouring into the black. The flames spread like wings across the void, painting the dark in orange and gold. Other human ships followed, each one blazing, each one refusing to yield. From the Keller fleet, stunned voices cried out. From distant Alliance ships, wide eyes watched. Humanity was not retreating. Humanity was charging into death, and in doing so, they were winning. The Veil recoiled, its shrieks echoing through every mind. It had never been met with such fury, such reckless fire. The shadows writhed, burning, breaking apart. On the bridge, Myra felt tears roll down her cheeks. Not of fear, but of awe. Humanity was small. Humanity was fragile. But in that moment, they were brighter than any star. The Resolute shook violently. Systems failed one by one. The ship would not last much longer. Yet the flames outside still spread, defiant, against the night. Jace's final command echoed through the fleet. Let them remember. Let the galaxy see what it means to fight with fire. And as the Veil writhed, and the Alliance watched, humanity's flame refused to die. The battlefield stretched across the void like a canvas of fire and shadow. Humanity's fleet was battered, their hulls scarred, and their engines smoking. Yet the flames still burned, bright, defiant, alive. Commander. Jace Arden gripped the railing of the Resolute's bridge. His uniform was singed, his face streaked with soot, but his eyes burned with the same determination that had carried him through countless battles. Ambassador Mira Solon stood beside him, her fingers clutching the railing, her heart racing. The Veil had grown larger, faster, and more cunning. Tendrils of darkness twisted around ships, feeding on every burst of energy. Even Emberfire struggled to hold them back. From the sensors, a horrifying truth appeared. The Veil was learning. Every time fire touched it, the shadows recoiled for a moment, but then adapted. Spreading faster, striking with new precision, the Keller fleet was shattered. Other Alliance ships were retreating. Only the humans dared to push forward. Jace's voice was calm, but firm. Form up. Focus fire on the tendrils nearest the colony. Protect Nera's hope at all costs. A young officer hesitated. Sir, we're outnumbered. We've already lost half our fleet. The Veil is adapting faster than we can strike. Jace turned to her, eyes steady. Then we adapt faster. Humans survive because we never wait for permission. We fight because we must. We fight because fire does not ask questions. It only burns, and so must we. Mira felt her pulse quicken. His words, simple and human, carried more weight than any alien strategy manual. Courage did not come from superiority, came from will, and humanity had plenty of it. The first Ember missiles fired, arcing through the darkness. Streams of burning gel struck tendrils reaching for the colony. The Veil hissed, a sound that rattled the bones and minds of every crew member. Flames spread, burning against the shadows, but then a massive wave of darkness surged forward, engulfing a human frigate. The ship's shields failed instantly, and alarms screamed. "Brace for impact," shouted the tactical officer. The ship shook violently, throwing crew members to the floor. Sparks rained from damaged circuits. And yet, even in destruction, the human crew fought. Flamethrowers ignited inside the hold, sending fire streaming into the void, slowing the shadow just enough for the rest of the fleet to maneuver. Mira's hands shook as she watched. "We can't hold much longer." Jace's eyes never left the screen. "Then we make it count. Every flame, every missile, every strike must be precise. Fire is our ally. We are its hands." And humanity began to improvise. Engineers rewired the damaged ships on the fly. Pilots risked everything to drop ember bombs directly into the Veil's densest masses. Human ingenuity shone brightest under pressure. A small shuttle, piloted by Lieutenant Kira Han, zipped through the shadows, trailing a massive line of burning gel. The Veil struck at it, but she banked and rolled with uncanny skill, leaving a ribbon of fire that sliced through the darkness. Observers from other species gasped. Even the Keller fleet, scattered and beaten, watched in awe as a human shuttle danced through annihilation, lighting the veil ablaze. Mira felt tears in her eyes. Humanity was small, fragile, but it was alive. Every human aboard the Resolute and her escorts fought with every ounce of courage, knowing that retreat meant death. Every human strike was more than strategy. It was heart, instinct, and survival. Then the veil struck harder. A wave of darkness rushed over the fleet, swallowing ships whole. Systems failed, engines froze, and flames sputtered. The void seemed endless, and the shadows stretched farther than anyone could imagine. "Captain," shouted an officer, "if this continues, the fleet will be destroyed." Jace's face was grim, but he did not flinch. He gripped the console. "We fight smarter, not harder. Draw it into the flare zones. Use the fire it hates. Lead it into the open." Mira realized what he meant. Humanity's fire was not just a weapon, it was bait. The veil could not resist energy, and fire combined with clever strategy could trap it. Orders flew across the fleet. Ships maneuvered with daring precision, cutting the veil into segments, isolating tendrils, and forcing the shadow into pockets of burning gel. The void lit with flames. The human fleet was shredded, their ships smoking and burning, yet still they flew. The veil had grown larger, more cunning, moving as a single living shadow. Its tendrils tore through vessels with ease, and every strike of fire seemed weaker than the last. The Resolute's hull groaned under stress, flames licking her sides as the crew fought to maintain power. Commander Jace Arden stood on the bridge, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the void. He knew they were close to collapse. One wrong move, and every human in the fleet would vanish into nothingness. Ambassador Mira Solon gripped the railing beside him, her knuckles white. Her mind raced. Every plan they had tried, every ember strike, seemed to barely slow the veil. The shadows had adapted again, and the humans were running out of options. From the comms a voice crackled. "Captain, shields at 20%, engines failing." Jace's eyes hardened. "Then we stop trying to fight them the old way. We'll give them a weapon they never expected." Mira tilted her head. "And what would that be?" Jace's lips curved into a faint, determined smile. "Us, humanity itself." The idea was simple, reckless, and dangerous. The crew would draw the veil in close, into the heart of the burning ember fields, using their own ships as bait. It was not a plan based on technology, it was based on instinct, courage, and the human refusal to give up. The young technician from Nara's Hope, Levin, spoke up from the comms console. "Sir, this could kill us all." Jace met his gaze. "Then make sure it counts. Fire isn't just fuel, it's memory, it's survival, and we are fire." The fleet adjusted formation. Human ships, battered but unbroken, flew straight into the veil's densest masses. Flames from ember warheads streaked across the void, forming a web that trapped the shadows. The veil recoiled, confused by the unexpected tactics. Then, as the humans moved deeper, the veil struck harder, nearly crushing the fleet. Systems failed, alarms screamed, and chaos threatened to swallow them. Yet the crew refused to panic. They trusted each other and the fire. Mira saw Lieutenant Kira Han piloting a shuttle through the chaos, weaving through tendrils to drop the last ember bombs, directly into the veil's heart. Kira's hands shook, her breath quick, but her eyes held steel. One misstep, and she would be gone. Yet she pushed forward, leaving trails of fire that licked through the darkness. "Flames are holding it back," shouted the tactical officer. "The veil? It's pulling apart." Jace's voice rang above the alarms. "Keep it together. Draw it further. Make it feed where it can't win." Mira's heart pounded. This was madness, yes, but the kind of madness humans had mastered. Over millennia. They adapted, they improvised, and they refused to surrender. One by one, human crews found openings, striking the veil where it was weakest. Each strike was precise, yet fueled by emotion, desperation, and hope. The veil shrieked, A sound felt, in bones and minds alike, and for the first time, it faltered. Its tendrils slowed, recoiling from the relentless flames. Shadows began to separate, confused and in pain. Mira's voice trembled as she whispered, "It's working." Then came the final moment. The Resolute and the last human vessels formed. A tight circle, engines flaring, guns firing, flamethrowers roaring. Every ship was a spark, every crew member a flame, and together they became a blazing inferno. The Veil, drawn into their firestorm, writhed violently. Jace shouted orders, each one sharp, clear, and fearless. Now, feed it everything, burn it all. Ember missiles, flamethrowers, and even improvised fires streaked into the void. The Veil screamed louder than ever, yet it could not adapt fast enough. Flames licked its body, corroding its form, cutting it into pieces. One by one, tendrils dissolved, black smoke fading under human fire. Finally, a silence fell. The void seemed empty, yet glowing with the last flickers of ember. Humanity's fleet, battered and scarred, hovered in the ashes. Ships groaned, engines sputtered, and smoke filled the corridors, but every human heart was alive. Myra stepped to the viewport, tears streaming down her face. Beyond the glass, the void was still black, but in it burned the final sparks of victory. Humanity had done what no one else could. They had turned despair into hope. They had outsmarted the unthinkable. Jace placed a hand on her shoulder. "They'll remember this. Every species, every fleet, every council in the galaxy. Humanity brought fire. Backhand fire doesn't surrender." Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting the last flames. "It's not just fire. It's who we are. Courage, ingenuity, heart. We fight because we have to, and we win because we won't stop." Around them, the fleet began to repair, the wounded tending to one another. The firestorm had ended, but its impact would be remembered, forever and somewhere, in the cold vastness of the galaxy. The first spark of humanity's legend ignited. A light no darkness could ever fully consume. Asterisk for a moment. The human fleet hung in the darkness, battered and scarred, yet alive. The Umbric Veil had been broken, reduced to scattered fragments, fleeing into the emptiness it had once ruled. The fire that humanity wielded primitive, yet brilliant had won. Commander Jace Arden lowered his hands from the console, exhaustion etched into his features. His uniform was torn, singed from sparks, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He looked out at the black canvas of space, streaked with the glowing orange traces of ember fire. "Is it over?" asked Lieutenant Kira Han, her voice trembling, but full of awe. Jace shook his head slightly. "It's never truly over. Shadows will return, but for now, we survived, and we burned brighter than they ever expected." Ambassador Mira Solon moved to the viewport, her tears reflecting the last glimmers of fire. She thought of the countless humans who had come before them, those who had faced impossible odds on primitive Earth, with nothing but courage and ingenuity. She realized then what they had truly done. Humanity had not just fought the Veil, they had reminded the galaxy what it meant to fight. The other species were silent at first. Across distant Alliance ships, delegates and admirals watched as the fragmented shadows drifted away. Whispers spread. Fire had returned. Fire had won. Fire had come from humans. Admiral Threxel of the Vorathes crystal facets glimmered, not with anger now, but with awe and disbelief. He had doubted, sabotaged, and tried to crush humanity. Yet here they were standing amid ruins and flames, victorious. Mira's voice broke the silence. "They say, humans are reckless, primitive, weak. But look at what we've done. We took fire, the oldest weapon, the first tool of survival, and we turned it into hope, against a shadow that devours stars." A Keller captain murmured to his crew, "They fought with courage, not with power alone. Perhaps we have underestimated them all these centuries." The Resolute's crew gathered on the bridge. They were exhausted, many injured, yet there was pride in every face. They had faced the darkness and survived. They had turned fire into strategy, courage into victory. Jace turned to Mira, his voice low but certain. They may not understand us, but we know who we are. Humanity doesn't just fight. We endure, we adapt, we rise. Mira nodded, tears streaming freely. And sometimes, that is stronger than any technology, any weapon, any ancient wisdom. But the twist came as the last remnants of the veil dissolved into empty space. The fragments of shadow began to shimmer, almost as if they were alive, reassembling, feeding on what remained. Humanity's fire had done more than burn. It had awakened something unexpected. The veil's fragments reacted to human presence, differently than they had to any other species. It recoiled, hesitated, and then scattered, not in retreat, but in fear. The fire did not simply burn. It shone with intent, guided by human hands, human courage, human ingenuity. Humanity's will. The spark of emotion, of heart, of life, was something the veil had never encountered. Mira gasped. It's not just fire, it's us, our minds, our hearts. It can't face that. Jace's lips curved into a faint, triumphant smile. The galaxy forgot one thing, he said softly. No matter how advanced they are, no matter how eternal the darkness, humans have something no algorithm, no shadow, no alien wisdom can copy. We never give up. That's our weapon. Across the stars, Alliance fleets began to cheer. Not for lasers, not for crystals or technology, but for the humans who had reminded them of what courage truly meant. Mira stepped onto the observation deck, staring out at the burnt horizon of space. Sparks still floated from distant explosions, yet the light of ember fire glowed like a pulse in the darkness. She whispered to herself, almost as if confessing a secret. Fire was ours long before the stars, and so were we. Jace approached, standing beside her. The two of them watched the galaxy stretch endlessly, black and silent once more, but forever changed. Humanity had rekindled what the universe had long abandoned. They had reminded every species that courage, heart, and determination could illuminate even the darkest night. In that moment, it was clear. Humanity would never be underestimated again. They had brought back fire and, in doing so, had lit the spark of hope that could never be extinguished. And somewhere in the silence of space, a final ember flickered, small, fragile, yet defiant, a reminder that even against impossible darkness, humanity would always burn. Last line. For the first time in eons, the universe remembered that the smallest spark, the human spark, could set the stars themselves ablaze.